you are. Hello, how are you? I want to tell you a quick story just about perspective. Now, when you're a human, you have a life experience, and that life experience puts you where you are. And everything you see in the world is from your perspective. You may not have an accurate perspective, but it's what you see, and that's how you see the world. And I want to tell you about the very first time I ever saw an elephant. When I was a boy, we had a very tiny television set. It's come from a company called Philco. It's a little tiny screen about this big, and it was a black and white television, no color, only 3 channels. And my favorite Saturday television show was a program called Tarzan of the Apes. Tarzan went to India, went to Africa, living in the jungle he was adopted by gorillas. And I had seen elephants on the Tarzan show, but the TV is only this big. So I did not know. And I had a coloring book that had elephants in that, and I knew what they looked like, except I didn't understand how big they were. Well, this particular Saturday afternoon, my mother thought it was very important that I learn to wash dishes. So I'm washing dishes, looking out the window and daydreaming, because I daydreamed a lot as a little boy. And there in my daddy's garden was an elephant. Huge, big as a shed, great big gray monster. Now, what I had not known was in our town, a traveling circus called the Shriner Circus. Traveling circus came through, and that elephant had pulled up its peg and wandered off and came into my father's garden, and there he was pulling up my father's cabbages. I get on the telephone. I call the police. I said, there's a monster in my daddy's garden. And the officer says, well, what does it look like? I says, it's huge. It's gray, has legs as big as tree trunks, and a big, nasty looking mouth, and a ropey looking nose. And up on its backside has 2 big floppy wings, and it's pulling up my daddy's cabbages with its tail. And the police officer paused and said, well, what's he doing with those cabbages? And I said, well, you just wouldn't believe me if I told you. So I have another story, a very quick story. 2 old friends were fishing in a boat in their favorite fishing spot. And they like to fish at night, and they had a lamp. And one almost upset the lamp, and he says, I don't want to lose that lamp. I already lost 1 lamp last year, and I just got it back this year. He says, I knocked the lamp overboard, and it went down into the water. It was still lit. And when I got it back this year, I pulled it up out of the water, and lo and behold, the lamp was still lit. His friend says, well, that is some story. And the other gentleman says, I caught a 45-pound catfish out of this very lake. 45 pounds. That is 18 and a half kilos. Big fish. And his other friend says, well, if you'll knock 5 kilos off of the weight of that fish, I'll blow out that lamp. So let's talk about being a storyteller. How about you? You want to hear?
That was fantastic, Buck. One after the another, 2 stories is just like a jackpot today. You're so passionate, so enthusiastic. Hello, namaskar, adab, sat sri akal, kasa काय, केडो हाल आहे, केम छो. Once again, I'm here, your loving host, Abha Jadhav, for your most loving talk show on YouTube, Spotlight with Abha, in collaboration with Radio Brainride. Friends, we are very fortunate to have a small masterclass on storytelling today by the world's best storyteller, Don Buck P. Creacy from Kentucky, USA, who is into storytelling since 4 decades. Today, Buck is here to teach us the art of storytelling. So get ready to learn how to become a successful storyteller. Remember, Don Buck P. Creacy is a passionate, miraculous, and an enthusiastic leader in his vocation as a performing storyteller and writer. And his enthusiasm is contagious, and his integrity is beyond question. So let's move on towards Don Buck P. Creacy. Welcome, Buck, into the spotlight once again.
Hello, everyone. And I've been hearing from so many people in India. Thank you very much for speaking to me. I appreciate that. That way it looks like I have friends. Well, I want to talk about 5 things that makes a good storyteller. 5 things. And if you will do these 5 things, you will become a very successful storyteller. First of all, people ask me all the time, how do I become a storyteller? And I don't mean to be flippant, but to say to them, well, first of all, you have to tell stories. You have to tell lots of stories. And you have to keep telling them, even if you tell a story poorly, you have to continue telling the story until you can tell it great. So the number one thing is just keep telling stories. Don't stop telling stories. And you have to read big books, little books, lots and lots and lots of books. And perhaps Abha will put some pictures of some of my favorite storytelling books on the screen for you later. But for now, I have a big long list of books. And if you're going to be a great storyteller, you must read books. Very important. Now, the second thing I want to tell you, now I don't know if you can see in my library, I'm trying to move around here. I have 7 other bookcases full of books. Books about engineering, books about metal, books about manufacturing, books about poetry and literature and biographies. Oh, I love to read biographies. They are wonderful. They will tell you about people who struggled and became something special. I have a little book here. It is a book that Abraham Lincoln read every morning. And if you want to be a great thinker, you should read books about great thinkers and think about what they think about, and then you will become a great storyteller. Well, now the second thing is very important. Very important. 1, you have to keep telling stories. 2, don't memorize stories. Never memorize. Now, you memorize a song, you memorize parts, a poem, but you don't memorize stories. So if you came in your house this afternoon after school or after work and somebody who loves you says, well, what happened in your day? And you say, well, I was walking down the street and all of a sudden I heard a loud bang and I looked up and I saw 2 cars crashing into each other. And then I saw smoke and fire, people running and screaming. And then suddenly one of the wheels came off of that truck and came flying across the sidewalk at me. And I looked at it, it looked like it was coming very fast and I could see everything. And I stepped out of the way and the wheel whizzed by me. And I was lucky to get home, I'll tell you that. Now, if that was your day, first of all, I'm sorry. But if somebody asks you about your day and you tell them something like that, you would not memorize that. Oh, I have to remember that the tire's coming at me. I have to remember that there was a truck and a car smashing together and there was fire and smoke. You would not do that because you were there. You knew where you were standing in that story. You knew the landmarks on what corner that street accident took place. You know what was happening. You could hear people screaming, and you knew how loud they screamed, and you saw all the confusion and the smoke and the fire, and you would never memorize the story. Years later, you could be standing at a party. Somebody said, tell us about that car accident where you almost got hit by the tire, and you could tell it again, all over again. You could tell the story again, and you could have the same passion that you did at that moment. Oh, the wheel was coming right at me. I could see everything. And then I just stepped out of the way, and the wheel went whizzing by. Oh, and there was fire, and there's smoke, and people screaming and running in confusion because you mentally landmarked that story as it was happening. Now, this is important. When you are learning a new story, you must put yourself in the same room of that story. Who is there? Where are they sitting? And what are they doing? And then you don't memorize that, but you landmark that in your mind, and you remember how nasty the witch was when she said what she said, and how innocent the little girl was when she said what she said. And now you are inside the story. You're no longer memorizing the story. You're just telling what's happening as you're looking around. And that is a wonderful place to be. Do not memorize stories. Everybody repeat after me. Do not memorize stories. That's right. Do not memorize stories. Place yourself inside of them and tell people what you're seeing as it is happening in the story. If you're in a battle story with swords and shields and you can hear the marching, stomping feet, well, if you can hear that, then you can tell people about it, and you can stamp your feet and give them an idea of how the army sounded and how the battle was progressing. Because you did not memorize that, you know this story. And that's very good. So, do not memorize, landmark a story. When I say landmark a story, I mean get inside of it and look around for the chairs and the windows and if there's a candle lit in the story, where is that candle? What color does what does the room smell like? Is it a happy place? Is it a scary place? Is it a dark cellar? If it's a dark cellar, is there dripping sounds? Are there fluttering sounds of bats? What is there when you landmark a story? You put yourself inside of it and you look around for what's happening. If it's a journey story, where did they go? Name these places and show them where they are. Landmark a story. And maybe you notice that I do this. Use your face. Use your face. Use your voice. You can be scary. You can be kind. You can be gentle. You can be innocent. Use your voice and make contact with your audience. Don't be afraid to look right at your audience. Because if you're looking right at your audience, then they can look at you. And they're going to tell themselves a story too. They're going to feel what you're not telling them. Here's one more little thing. As you landmark a story, always remember, it's not what you say. Sometimes it's what you leave out. It's not what you say. Sometimes it's what you leave out. One time, Grandpa was sitting out on the front porch, just minding his own business. One arm just about as long as the other in the sunlight there, and fella pulled up in a big black car. And there's a black dog sitting there on the steps. And the fella in the car thought he'd be safe. He rolled down his window. He says, "Does your dog bite?" Grandpa says, "My dog don't bite." Well, the fella felt pretty safe, and he opened up the door, and he got out and started up the stairs, and that dog jumped up and bit him right on the leg and chased him all the way back inside the car. And the guy said, he rolled down his window and said, "I thought you said your dog don't bite." He said, "Mine don't, but that one right there does." You see, you have to, it's not what you tell. Sometimes it's what you leave out, because that lets you fill in the parts about the story that I didn't tell you. See?
Yes.
My dog don't bite, but that one right there does. Okay, so now you have to build it. So that's 3 things. Keep telling stories. Don't memorize them, landmark them, and use your voice, your face, your body to connect with the audience. If you don't take care of your audience will not take care of you. So you must show compassion, and you must, if someone looks afraid, you need to look them in the eye and tell them it's okay to be afraid. And if you tell scary stories, I can tell scary stories that'll make you stay awake all night long. But I don't tell those kind of stories to little children. No, I tell those to grown people who can wrestle with their own devils all night long. All right. So the 4th thing I want to share with you is you must build a repertoire of stories. Happy stories, sad stories, birthday stories, ghost stories for kids, scary stories for teenagers, scary stories for grown-ups, stories for families, stories for audiences of just adults, stories, adventure stories, every kind of story. You must build a repertoire of stories. And if I say if you have 40 stories that you can tell over and over and over again, and you've practiced them and you can tell them over and over, you tell them to the dog, you tell them to the cat, you tell them to your sisters and your brothers, you tell 40 stories and you know 40 stories, how wonderful it is to be able to go back and say, oh, let me tell you a story. Now you're becoming a storyteller. If you have 40 stories, you can take 40 stories on the road. You can make a living with 40 stories. But you must work very hard to be a storyteller.
True.
And you need 40 stories that you can tell anytime. Sometimes I will be laying in bed and my wife will say, honey, tell me a story. And I said, what kind of story do you want? She says, I want to hear a funny story. So I'll tell a funny story. Then she'll say, I want to hear a love story. And so I'll whip out my princess story and tell princesses stories. One of my very favorite stories in the whole world is a 2,000-year-old story called A Stone Before the Door. And it is from Turkey. It is a wonderful story, and you should look it up on the internet. It's on the internet. A Stone Before the Door. It's when I have friends that are getting married, I make sure that I go over and see them and tell them both together the story about the stone before the door. And maybe someday I'll tell you too, but not right now. I don't have time right now. And you have to make sure that you use colorful language that people don't normally say. That's what makes a good storyteller, is when you say things that catches people off guard. For example, like that elephant in my first story had big old floppity wings up on its backside. Now, you know, and I know that those are ears, but I didn't call them that. I called them wings. So that's colorful language. And he's pulling up that my daddy's cabbages with his tail. Well, that's his trunk. And so anybody hearing that story is going to go, wait a minute, that's the elephant's trunk. He's looking at the elephant backwards. But then I say, and what is he doing with those cabbages? I said, well, you just wouldn't believe me if I told you. Because we all know how an elephant feeds himself. So if you have an elephant backwards, it ruins your perspective. It's not an accurate perspective. But that's colorful language, and you should use colorful language. Use hearing. What do you hear? What can you smell? How does it taste? What does it feel like to touch it? Is the stone hard, smooth, scrapey? Is it brittle? Does it crumble? Use colorful language. If you see a flower, don't just say a flower. Oh no, it's a deep pink flower with large petals that curl. And it looks like a bird. If you see it in a distance, you would think it was a pink bird. It's a beautiful flower. Use colors, use smell. This coffee smells good right here. This is coffee. And maybe I should have used a little sugar in my coffee. So those are 5 things. Now, here's a bonus for you. One thing I haven't talked about, and I want to talk about that, and you can ask questions in a minute. One thing I want to talk about is something called the controlling idea. This controlling idea is one sentence that guides the whole story. Now, if you go online and you look up my most famous story, it's called 3 Penny Mama. It's on YouTube. You can hear it. It's called 3 Penny Mama. It's my most famous story. The day that we published that story back 15, 20 years ago, that story was downloaded about 2.5 million times that day. And 65 websites stole that story and put it on their websites as their own. It took me forever to get them to get it off of there, but there it is. It's online, 3 Penny Mama. You can look it up. It's a wonderful story. There's a controlling idea for that story. Now, the controlling idea never shows up in a story. It only shows up while you're writing the story. And here's the sentence. Life is good because there are adults who keep their promises to children. Now, this is a true story about my sisters and I. We were kidnapped off our grandmother's front porch as tiny children, given different names and taken far away to a different part of the United States, from Texas to Arizona, 749 miles away from home, and given different names. And then that lady that stole us was killed in a car accident. Nowhere in my story will you hear the words, life is good because there's adults who keep their promises to children. But that sentence guided the entire writing and editing process of 3 Penny Mama. So if you have a story that you want to tell and you have a single idea that somebody wants to walk away with, you need a controlling idea. Now, this is very important in business storytelling. What do you want your audience to walk away with? How do you want them to feel about your story? Well, then you need a controlling idea. One sentence that you never tell the audience, but it controls how the story is put together and what do you throw away and what do you keep. Okay, I think that's 5 things, and that's a pretty good lesson right there. Would you like to ask me any questions?
Yes, of course.
Any questions?
Buck. Yes, I have questions. From your points only, I have made some questions. Very first question is that, can anyone become a storyteller?
Everyone already is a storyteller.
Okay.
Everyone already is a storyteller. By human nature, we are hardwired to tell stories. If something happens, the baby is crying, one of the little children is crying, what happened? Well, he hit me I was inside, I wanted the ball, and he hit me with the ball, and then he made me cry. Well, immediately we start telling stories. How was your day? Oh, you wouldn't believe my parents. My parents are so strict. They just won't let me do anything. Well, see, that's a story, and they're telling a story on their parents. All humans are already designed to tell stories. Think about it. If you just listen, I love to go to market. And when I'm at market, I listen to other people and they're telling each other stories.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't believe it. That child, I don't know what we're going to do with her. She's run off with that fella and he's no good. And I just don't know if we're ever going to get her back. It's so sad. And they're telling each other stories. Now, the joy of getting paid to tell stories is you have to tell stories that people want to hear again. You have a reputation of making people laugh, or you make people feel strong, or you make people feel confident, or you make people feel You make them feel something real, and then they want you back around. That's the secret. But everyone is already a storyteller. Now, how to be a good storyteller. Another thing I didn't talk about is you have to get rid of fillers. Maybe you've talked to someone who is always saying, I wish that we could, maybe we could, did I tell you about the, they're saying, a lot of people when they're talking, they have verbal habits. They have fillers that they use while they think of what they want to say. It's no good. It's never any good. It's better to say nothing than to have a filler in the middle of your language. Okay.
So we must keep in mind that we should not do any kind of ums and ums and all that when we are telling a story, right? That is what you meant, Buck?
It is. And when you're speaking in front of anyone, the ums and the fillers distract from what you're trying to say. Mm-hmm. They take away from the meaning that you're trying to share. When I'm confused or I'm uncomfortable, I have a tendency to use fillers when I'm uncomfortable. If I'm comfortable, like today, they never show up. Unless I'm talking about ums. So being aware of how you sound to someone else is very important to being a good storyteller. You must hear yourself. When I first started telling stories for money, I would record my stories and just listen back to me telling them over and over. Oh, I've got to fix that. I can't stand that. I can't use that. So you discover your verbal habits and then get rid of them.
Yes, that's very important. Once we hear ourselves, it's a kind of self-analysis. We are hearing our stories again and again, and we ourselves are finding out what are the little mistakes we have done, and next time we have to improve on it, we have to work on it so that we cannot repeat it next time.
And so when you're telling a story, you can make your story better by making yourself laugh. What makes it funny? One time I was laughing and my wife came in and she says, "What's so funny?" And I said, "Never mind." She says, No, what's so funny?" And I says, "Well, I'm working on a joke." And she says, "Let me hear it." And I said, "I'm not finished with it yet." See, I like that joke where I'm going to tell you a joke. I'm working on a joke, but I'm not going to tell you the joke until it's finished, until I know that it's a joke. So that's it. I love to write jokes, by the way. It makes me very happy to write jokes.
Great.
That perspective story, I laughed about that for about a
Sometimes it happens that people, they want to tell stories, they want to share what they have experienced, but because of lack of confidence, they're not able to speak up. So how to get that confidence?
Well, you have to be willing. Everybody that's listening, raise your right hand and repeat after me. And you too, Abha, raise your right hand. I promise to tell stories poorly until I can tell them well. Congratulations, you're a storyteller.
Oh.
I promise to tell stories poorly until I can tell them well.
Wow.
Do you see that?
Yes.
Until I can tell them well. it's a great freedom to know that I can tell the story badly. It's all right if I tell the story badly.
True.
Because I'm going to get better. I'm going to tell it better and better.
That
it's the
was
greatest
really
thing
great.
ever.
Great, really. This by doing this thing, just this little thing, I'm really feeling confident. Okay, now even I can also speak, tell a story. So thanks for that bonus
I would
tip.
like for you to. I promise that I will tell stories poorly until I can tell them well. That is very strong. That's a wonderful thing. In my classes, I always make people raise their right hand and promise to tell stories poorly until we can tell them well. Now, where do you find great stories? You just look around. Every good book. Let me just tell you some great sources of storytelling. I love this man right here. I don't know if you can see him. C.S. Lewis. He is one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century. He taught at Magdalen College in Oxford, England. He taught Renaissance English. And he is a wonderful, deep thinker. He wrote a children's series called The Chronicles of Narnia.
Yes.
Perhaps you've heard of it.
Yes, I have.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the Silver Chair.
Yes.
And the Pilgrim's Progress, and The Last Battle. Well, that series of 7 books, I have read it myself from beginning to end 26 times.
Oh God, that's
it's
really commendable. Yes, I've seen movies of this Chronicles of Narnia. I've seen movies.
Mm-hmm. Well, so you should read the book. It's even better.
Okay.
So
sure,
the books are grown-ups should do that, because at the first read it looks like a children's adventure. The second time you read it, it's a story of courage. The third time you read it, it's a story of character. It's a wonderfully well-written series of stories. The Chronicles of Narnia, 7 books. They're wonderful. And I always read them in January, because in the first book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's always winter and never Christmas.
Yes.
So I love to read it starting in January. So soon I will get that book out and I will read it all the way through again. January the 1st, I will start again and read it again. So C.S. Lewis is a wonderful creative person. Also Tolkien, The Hobbit, and the Fellowship of the Ring, The Hobbit, The Unexpected Journey is a wonderful story, a great adventure, and he's a great storyteller. And also another great storyteller is Leo Tolstoy.
Yes.
Tolstoy, who wrote so many wonderful books. Now, you need to read these books. If you want to be a great storyteller, you need to understand how stories fit together in their parts and pieces, like a jigsaw puzzle. How can I fit the parts and pieces of a story so that it makes sense as I tell the story, and that my audience can tell themselves a story as I'm telling in their own imagination? They have to see it in their own head. They have to see that room and that candle and hear the dripping water. They have to be able to hear that themselves. Well, I can't think. So here's some good books to learn, to read, to help you as a storyteller. Now, a lot of people want to be a corporate storyteller. I was corporate storyteller. They want to be a corporate storyteller. People will write me out of the blue. Please, I want to become a corporate storyteller. They like the sound of that. but they don't know what you have to know to be a corporate storyteller. One thing that you need to, one of the kinds of books you need to read is business books. Here is my favorite business book. It's called Out of the Crisis by Dr. Deming. Out of the Crisis by Dr. Deming. This book is not for sissies. It's a hard book to read. It's a very strong book on the world of business. And this is a person that you need to know about, Dr. Deming. And then here's another book. Maybe you've seen this book, The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yes, it is there in my
by
bookshelf
Dr.
too.
Stephen Covey, my son.
Yes.
My son, actually, Mr. Covey came to my son's wedding. Stephen Covey came to my son's wedding.
Wow, that's great.
And here's a book for a guide for storytellers, a beginning guide for storytellers. If you're a new storyteller, the National Storytelling Network in the United States, Jonesboro, Tennessee, and St. Louis, Missouri, has this book for sale in their bookstore, Beginner Guide to Storytelling. This is a good little book. It's a little book, tiny little book, not that much to it. And then this is the most dangerous book in the world. The most dangerous book in the world. I'm a little afraid to show you this book because if you're a terrible person, this book will make you more terrible. It's called The 48 Laws of Power. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. For many years, I would not tell anybody I owned this book because he talks about the laws of power as though they're the law of gravity. Mm-hmm. If you do this, there is a consequence for it. If you break this law, this is what's going to happen. The law of gravity does not care if you think you can fly. If you think you can fly and you jump off the building, you will find out that the law of gravity does not care about your ideas and beliefs about your personal ability to fly. And he says the laws of power are the same way. There's 48 laws of power. This is a dangerous book. Then there's another book called Mastery. And if you read this book, there's hope for you. This is how to understand what power is and how to use it instead of manipulating people and tricking them. But you can just use the laws of power to help you move forward. And let me show you a couple more books while we got some time. This book here is called Drama by John Lithgow. This is a wonderful book about story. And if you can get this book and read it, John Lithgow, Drama. It's a wonderful book. John Lithgow, Drama. This book is wonderful. And probably the book that has helped me the most about storytelling is this one right here, Story by Robert McKee. This book is all worn out, lots of notes in this book where I write in my book so I can know more about stories. This is a powerful book. And he has been responsible for most of the movies that you and I know. For example, like Die Hard, the Die Hard movies. He had lots and lots to do with all of those. Co-produced hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of movies. He knows about story. His workshop out in California cost $14,000 for 1 week.
Wow. US
dollars, $14,000 for 1 week. And his book's solid for the next 10 years. And he is 78 years old.
Oh.
I don't think I'm going to get to go to his workshop. But this book is a wonderful book. Story by Robert McKee. And like I said, there are lots of notes. I have lots of notes inside of this book. And if you're going to buy a book to learn how to be a storyteller, buy this book. And then take what you read here and turn it into language. Now, in the business world, here's another book, a wonderful book called How to Fly a Horse.
Oh.
And this is by Kevin Ashton. Kevin Ashton. Let's see if I can turn it there. They're Kevin Ashton, How to Fly a Horse. It's a wonderful book about innovation and about people coming up with things, new things. This is the story behind businesses that we know today. This is a wonderful book. Oh, look, I have Jewish stories, and I have German stories and Swedish stories, and this book here is Strategic Storytelling. This is a good book. And here's another book that's wonderful. How to Win, How to Be, Whoever Tells the Best Story Wins. Whoever tells the best story wins. I don't know if that's backwards for you or what. I apologize. And then this book here by Stephen Denning, he actually started the corporate storytelling movement. A Leader's Guide to Storytelling, Business Narrative. Business Narrative by Stephen Denning. Stephen Denning. There, can you see it? Stephen Denning. Yes. It's a wonderful book. Will help you a lot. So read books about poetry. Read books about stories. I collect stories. I have a whole series of books just on Viking stories. I think there's 10 volumes of Viking stories. Now, there's some good stories there. And they were great adventurers, and they came to India. They came to Africa. They came to the Middle East. Vikings traveled the world. Back when people thought the world was flat, they were discovering America. They lived in North America. When they were living in North America long before Christopher Columbus came to North America. Yes, it's true. So, there's lots to learn if you read lots of books, and then you can tell the stories.
But today I'm feeling as if I have got God's blessings, as a treasure is open in front of me, and one after the other I am getting so many resources to learn how to become a best storyteller. And I'm 100% sure that our listeners today, they have been feeling blessed that today Buck Creacy, who is the best storyteller in the world, is sharing all the secrets for how to become a best storyteller. So thank you very much for this masterclass, Buck. We are totally spellbound. We don't have words to express the feelings, the way you have shared all the tips, all the resources for best storytelling. So thank you once again, and thank you for your valuable time. And it's, I'm really overwhelmed with this gesture of yours. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let me just say something. I don't really believe I'm the best storyteller in the world. I don't really believe that. I believe I'm a very good storyteller, but I don't think I'm the best in the world. Thank you. You're too kind to me. But I believe probably the best storyteller in the world might be watching this right now, and they just haven't begun. So anybody can be the best storyteller in the world. You know what my favorite audience is? Can I tell you who my favorite audience is?
Please.
My favorite audience in the world is the very next audience, the very next audience that I have. The very next audience the people who are listening to this right now, they're my favorite audience in the whole world. I will never have another audience like this audience right now.
Wow.
They're my very favorite audience. And so I hope people all over India are watching this. I hope that you'll go on YouTube and look up Three Penny Mama. And I hope you took down a pencil and wrote down those 5 things.
Yes,
keep telling stories. Don't memorize stories and landmark a story. hang on a second there. Landmark your story and use your face, your voice to connect with your audience and build a repertoire. Now, let's talk about how to be a paid storyteller. This is important. You might want one piece of paper that has your picture on it, and you might want one piece of paper that has what kind of stories you tell, where you're from, and whether or not you have any experience. You might want one piece of paper that lets them know how to find you with your phone number, your address where they can write to you, and you might want to be able to send that to schools and libraries and places where there is entertainment. And you might just want to go out and stand on the corner and tell stories, because once you start telling stories, people will hear you and they will love you, and then they will want you to come and tell at their birthday parties, at their anniversary, their retirement parties, and their gatherings together. And look at the calendar. Valentine's Day is a wonderful time to work. In America, we have a holiday called Valentine's Day. It's a romantic holiday. I don't know if they have it in India or not, but
no,
let's suppose they do. If there's a romantic holiday. Oh, you don't have Valentine's? Okay, so see, I'm ignorant.
No, we do celebrate. We do celebrate Valentine's Day over here in some parts of country, but we don't have any holiday on that day.
Oh, okay. All right. So now we don't let out school and we don't stop business, but we do have a day that we celebrate romance and love.
Wow.
We call that Valentine's Day, Saint Valentine's Day. Yes. And so I have a little talk that I love to do called Romance 101. And I talk about how to be romantic with your sweetheart. And it's funny stories that got me in trouble. I love to tell romantic stories 101. And I just start letting people know all around me that I have this available for February the 14th. And then next thing you know, someone will call and I say, well, this is how much it will cost for me to come. And I tell them a price that I think is reasonable. And now if you charge for your storytelling, you charge somebody a 10 rupee, whatever 10 rupee is, they expect a show that's worth 400 rupee.
Absolutely. True.
You must always deliver a powerful story. Even if you're doing it for free, you must do a powerful story so that people will know that you know about storytelling, and later on you can charge more. When I first started, I barely charged anything. $25, $50. Not very much money. But soon I found out it cost me more in gasoline to go there and come home than I made while I was there. So I had to raise my prices. So that's where business comes in important. You have to manage what you have.
True.
All right.
So,
I'm trying to think of one more thing here real quickly. As a professional, yeah, go ahead.
We have very less time now remaining. So definitely, one last thing what you wanted to share, I want you to wind up with that. So please continue.
So if you are dreaming of being a storyteller, begin telling stories and don't stop. Remember, you made me a promise.
Yes.
I promise to tell stories poorly until I can tell them well. You made me a promise. I expect you to keep that promise. Now,
yes, I will.
Landmark a story. Don't memorize the story. Landmark a story, and then use your voice, your face, to bring color and information to your audience about the story. And build you a repertoire. If you have 40 stories, you can make a living on 40 stories if you tell them well. But they have to be great stories. All right. Well, I love talking with you, Abha.
Thank you.
And I just want you to have a great day. And I have lots of work to do. It's a cold December day here, and so I have lots of work to do today outside. So I need to go. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, yes, it was extremely helpful, and it will definitely guide a lot of beginners in storytelling field. And definitely, uh, I am 100% sure that after listening to this episode, many who were still thinking, to start and still waiting how to start, they will definitely take a pledge the way I have taken, and they will jump into the storytelling field. So,
That's wonderful. All right. Thank you.
thank you, Buck. Thank you. Thank you for your lovely,
Bye,
wonderful
everybody.
masterclass. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye, everybody.